My name is Kira, and I did a review of the sexual experiences and sexuality of women with serious mental illness. I titled it Both Hands Tied Behind Her Back, just to kind of emphasize the multitude of barriers that women with serious mental illness face when seeking to live a fulfilled sexual life. So, just a little bit of background. Increasingly, major health institutions around the world are actually beginning to recognize that sexuality is more than just the absence of negative health outcomes. The World Health Organization has stated that sexuality includes understanding pleasure and intimacy, obviously sexual orientation, but also is necessary to understand the gender identities and the roles of gender in our society, and that it's really influenced by a ton of factors, including biological and psychological, but also political, legal, historical, religious, etc. And so the definition suggests that sexuality has the capacity to affect an individual's identity as well as their social functioning and the ability to form trusting relationships. It's not just limited to, sexual self-expression. And also that it's important to recognize that sexuality is an inherently gendered experience because of these societal and cultural norms. And so sexual satisfaction and rights, they require an understanding of gender and gender power imbalances. Many women, and specifically women from disadvantaged groups, they are particularly victims of gender dynamics and gender violence. And so a gender perspective allows for a better understanding of how the heteropatriarchal system constructs these subjectivities in women and men and people of all gender identities, and then therefore has this regulatory effect on sexual practices. Women with serious mental illness are at increased risk of rape and coercive sex, and they're more likely to be victims of intimate partner violence. The current research demonstrates that women with serious mental illness live in more precarious circumstances than than women without serious mental illness. And just to note, like previous studies really have focused on the prevalence of STIs, like I said previously in this population, and much less on the subjective experience of sexuality. And if it does, it definitely does not consider a gender perspective. And so a review of sexual experiences of women with serious mental illness is necessary to really comprehensively identify the influence of subjective, intersubjective, and systemic processes on the sexual perspectives and experiences of this population. And that's what this research will, explore. And it will seek to examine these experiences, and it'll evaluate the hypothesis that existing barriers and systems impede on the sexual experiences of women with serious mental illness and therefore their ability to live fulfilled lives. Its implications are important for policy and for program change at the community level. And recognizing the subjective sexual experiences of women with serious mental illness can result in a clinician, for example, being able to better support this population by creating safe spaces to discuss it, creating community, and, for example, creating workshops on self-exploration and autonomy and these kinds of things. In terms of methods, so the search strategy that I used considered a handful of concepts. The first word that I put in was sexuality or some kind of derivative of sexuality. And then I was looking for people only experiencing serious mental illness. And then I was looking for some sort of gender component, whether it was woman or feminism or gender imbalance. These are the keywords that I put into the search. And I used the Scopus database, and I only considered English in terms of inclusion criteria. I only considered English studies, and I only looked at qualitative studies because I wanted to really understand the subjective experience, and the people or the population was strictly women. I don't know why I wrote people. Women with serious mental illness. In terms of analyzing the data that I received, I just kind of looked for main central themes in the research. There were four findings that I kind of extrapolated from the review that I did. They include stigma, the socialization of women, interpersonal relationships and how they're affected, and the effects of